Well, hey there, everybody. Here we go. It's time for the final lesson in Unit 2, Lesson 9, which is all about the math class. So I want to point out before we move forward here that the math class is also featured on the Java Quick Reference Guide. There are many methods in the math class, but the only ones that you have to know are the ones that are included on the Java Quick Reference Guide. And most of them are pretty easy. The first four are pretty easy. The only one that is a little bit tricky is math.random, and that'll take a little bit of practice to get used to. But let's go ahead and hop in here. So there is this thing called the math class, and the math class is full of static methods that you can call to do special math operations. Again, it's part of the Java Lang package, which is built in, so we don't have to import anything. We can literally just type in math dot and then whatever we want to, whatever method we want to call. And these are all static methods, so they get called using, again, the class name and then dot and then the method name. And since these are the math class methods, it's always math dot whatever. All right, so the first one that we want to know is math.abs, and you can pass in a double or you can pass in an integer for this one. So math.abs with a double will return the absolute value of a double, and then math.abs with an integer being passed in will return the absolute value of the int. So a couple of quick examples of it down here. Math.abs with negative 4.0 is just going to return 4.0 because that's the absolute value. Same thing with math.abs negative 3, that's just going to return 3. Math.abs 4.5, just going to return 4.5. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, this one. Then we have math.square root, or as some people say, math.squirt. And this one takes a double as its parameter. And what it's going to do is it's going to return the positive square root of any double value that you pass in. So math.square root 9.0 is going to return 3.0. And math.square root 23.0 is going to return 4.7958. And of course we're feeding it doubles and we're expecting doubles because with square roots you always have the potential for decimals. And then of course if we try to feed it a negative number, like math.square root of negative 5.0, that's going to return NaN, which is an error message. That just reminds you that there's no such thing as a square root of a negative number, unless you're learning about imaginary numbers, which is not within the scope of this class. All right, so now we have math.pow, which needs two doubles to be passed in as the arguments here. So what this does is this will return the value of the first argument raised to the power of the second argument. So 5.0 comma 3.0 being passed in with math.pow is going to take 5 and multiply it by 5 and then multiply it by 5 again. So that's going to return 125.0. Of course, any number taken to the 0 power is always just 1. So 2.0 to the power of 0 returns 1.0. And math.pow negative 3.5 to the 4th power returns this number over here. So there you go. Once again, pretty straightforward. But now it's time to talk about math.random. So math.random is a funny kind of method here, and it gets used in a couple of different ways, and both of them are important to understand for the class, obviously. So if you just call math.random just by itself, it returns a random double value that is greater than or equal to 0.0 and then less than 1.0. So it'll be anywhere from 0.0 all the way up to 0.99. That's what math.random by itself is going to return. So math.random can get used to kind of control the probability of something. So for instance, what we're looking at here is we're looking at a table of all of the 100 possibilities that we could get when we called math.random. Now, if we put math.random in an if statement, and if we said if math.random is less than 0.30, then this entire area that's shaded in green is, that's the portion of math.random that would fit this, this condition. So in other words, if I wanted to make sure that something happened only 30% of the time, then I could say if math.random is less than 0.30, then go ahead and do this thing. That's one way that you could control probability. Now, if I wanted to have a higher probability of something, if I wanted to make sure something happened most of the time, but maybe not all of the time, so if I had to make sure that something happened 80% of the time, then I could take a conditional statement like this: if math.random is less than 0.80, and again, we have 80 different possibilities that it could occur. Only 20% of the time it would not happen. So that's one of the ways that math.random is frequently used in this class, is just to control probability and to control how often something happens. However, sometimes we need to get a random number. We need a random integer. And in order to get a random integer from math.random, we have a little bit more of an equation that we have to follow here. What we need is, surrounded by parentheses, we need an int, or we need to cast all of this to an int, all right? And that's because math.random returns a double, and if you want a whole number, then you just cast it to an integer, and that'll take care of that for you. The next thing that we need is, within the next set of parentheses, we need math.random. We also need a set of parentheses right here after random, because we're calling a method. So math.random multiplied by the range, and then outside the parentheses we add the min, so whatever min value we're looking for. All right, so go ahead and pause the video here real quick and see if you could figure out what is the range of numbers that would happen if you called int math.random times 10 plus 1. So again, just pause the video and see if you could figure out what are the range of values that this would give you. I'm going to assume that you paused the video. What this is going to do is, this is going to count from 1 all the way up to 10, and it's going to include 10. And you could just verify that on your fingers if you wanted to. If I start at number 1, and if my range is 10, when you count all the way up to 10, this is how you would get a number, a random number from 1 to 10. All right, let's try this one down here. So now you've got int math.random times 6 plus 5. Once again, pause the video. See if you could figure out what is the range of integers that this call to math.random would give you. I'll give you a second to pause the video. And I assume at this point you've paused the video and you've tried to figure it out. So if the min value is 5 and the range is 6, then that means this is going to give you a random number from 5 to 10, including number 10. And again, you can just kind of verify that on your fingers. If you start at number 5 and then count your 6 values, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, okay, sorry. I miscounted. So if you count on your fingers, starting out, number 5 is your thumb, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you get to 6, that's when you get to 10. So understanding math.random and the difference between like the minimum and the range and what that's going to give you can be a little bit tricky. You got to be a little careful. And there's actually a few other things that we should check out here as well. So what if we needed to write the line of code that would produce a random number from 15 to 30 inclusive? What if this was what we were told to do? And we're given the minimum number, and then we're given the maximum number, but we don't know the range. Well, it turns out there's a really useful formula. The range, this number right here, is always equal to the max minus the min plus 1. So in this case, your maximum number is 30, your minimum number is 15. So if you do 30 minus 15, that's obviously going to give you 15. Then add 1 to it, that gets you 16. So that means the line of code that will produce it is int math.random times 16 plus 15. So that's another operation that you should know how to do. And again, it's always good to just kind of do some practices like this. All right, so what would print with this line of code right here? All right, well, your starting point is 1, your range is 3. A lot of times I'll just kind of count these out on my fingers. If I start at 1 and my range is 3, it's going to be 1, 2, or 3. So that's pretty easy. It's going to be 1 to 3. Let's try this one down here. We're calling math.random multiplying by 6. We're casting it to an integer, but this time we're not adding anything. Well, that means it's going to start at 0, and there will be 6 values. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I count 6 values starting at 0, this is going to give me a random number from 0 to 5. This one right here, math.random being cast to an int multiplied by 10, and we're starting at 5. So again, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is going to give us a random number from 5 to 14. Again, a lot of people would kind of look at this off the top of their heads and say, oh, that's a random number from 5 to 15. But if you don't, if you're not a little extra careful about, where you're starting and where you're ending and what your range is, that could cause some confusion. So the question is, how would you change this last one right here so that the range would be from 5 to 15? Go ahead and pause the video, see how you would answer that one. I'm going to assume you paused the video, and if we want to change, if we want it to be from 5 to 15 instead of from 5 to 14, that means we just need to add 1 to the range. So math.random times 11 plus 5 would give us the range that we're going for there. All right, guys, well, with that, we've gotten to the end of this lesson, so let's just do some quick review. There are many static math methods that can be called using math.methodName for each method. Again, be familiar with the math class methods that appear on the Java Quick Reference Guide. The values returned from math.random can be manipulated to produce a random int or a double in a predefined range. So that's good to know. And then just remember that int math.random times range plus min moves the random number into a range starting from that minimum number. And then the range is always the maximum number minus the minimum number plus 1. That'll always give you this number right here. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you in class.